So Glenn Greenwald, who we talked with, I should say. I mean, we talk about him a lot too, but we talked with him in December of 2023. And we asked him because, he has the show on Rumble, and because he debunked Russiagate, and because he was anti-Ukraine war, because he thought the January 6ers were overcharged, just like we agree with him on all those things, he attracted a lot of MAGA people in his audience. And we talked to him because we attracted some MAGA people in our audience because we were basically in line with him on all those issues. So we had the same kind of thing happen to our audience. And we said, once you started opposing Israel after October 7th, what happened to your show? And is it a danger that, some people fall victim to audience capture in this space? And so he said, yeah, he said he lost 15 to 20% of his paid subscribers to his show. And he doesn't do the show with a webcam and a USB mic. He's got a studio to pay for. It's a big deal to lose all of those paid subscribers. But this is why he is really one of the GOATs, because he really went off after this Mahmoud Khalil detention. So here's Stephen Miller tweets out, vast numbers of foreign nationals who support terrorism and reject American values have never been awarded visas.
Have been awarded visas. Pardon me.
Revoking them is a national security imperative. We must only admit those, I guess that's his typo, who embrace the core principles of our civilization. So Glenn comes in. Loving and revering Israel is not a core American value. Forcing American workers to subsidize Israel, even though millions of Israelis have a higher standard of living than they do, is not a core American value. Free speech and protest are core American values. So then he goes on. He kind of goes off and he really attacks this from every single angle. And I thought he did a great job. He tweets here, Trump voters were promised mass deportations of immigrants who entered the U.S. illegally. Instead, the Trump administration deported fewer in February than the Biden administration deported in February 2024. Hence the distraction. Look at the legal resident we deported for his political views. Right?
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Ouch is right. Ouch is right. Treating a foreign spouse of an American citizen as some sort of unwanted alien invader who should be deported unless they remain silent is particularly odd for Trump supporters, given that he married two different foreigners who came to the U.S. and were green card holders. Ouch again. So one guy asked him here, Ghost Runner Trek Across America, asked, is this the hill to die on? And he says, yes. Watching the U.S. government punish and deport people for the crime of criticizing and protesting Israel because Miriam Adelson gave Trump $100 million and his administration is filled with Israel loyalists is absolutely a hill to die on. Of course it's a hill to die on.
Glenn.
Yes. Like, what do you mean, is this a hill to die on? It's just like, this is just a monstrous...
The cope. Yeah. No, that's because what are they going to say? Because in my experience, most MAGA are not Zionists. Most of them are not. Most of them don't like this shit. Most of them hate when Trump goes and dances in front of the Israel flag, bragging about how much he does for Israel. Most of them don't like it. They tolerate it. So what can they retreat to? But, I don't like it, but chainsaw!
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
What else can they do?
Well, yeah, this is the cope, as you said. Like, yeah, is this a hill to die on? Implies like, yeah, we don't like this in principle, but the guy seems like a bad guy, and so we're really going to make a big deal out of this, right? I mean, do we really have to make a big deal? And Glenn, obviously, his speech and journalism are his passions, and so he says, yes, obviously. And if you really want to know what are core American values, these tweets might be out of order. I couldn't keep track of them, so these are not all necessarily in sequence. If you really want to know what are core American values, you can first look to the Bill of Rights, which applies to everyone legally in the United States, citizen or not. If you are here legally, you have First Amendment protections. This is the other thing the MAGA people, the chuds, try and hide behind. Whoa! He's here on a visa. So what does that mean? That means he has to kiss the American flag 3 times a day? No. Like, if you're here legally, you live under our laws. But also read what Washington and Jefferson said when warning of the dangers of enduring attachments to foreign countries. So here's George Washington's farewell address, which he linked to. It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world. So far, I mean, as we are now at liberty to do it. For let me not be understood as capable of patronizing infidelity to existing engagements. And of course, Thomas Jefferson, very anti-woke Thomas Jefferson, what I deem the essential principles of our government: peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none. So here's King of Napa Valley, comes for some. You're whining is at its peak over a Syrian green card holder that actively hates the country he lives in and organizes illegal protests that turn violent, take over property, and prohibit students from using facilities they pay for, none of which is true, and no post ever on Hamas's war crimes. So Glenn comes back at him. Absolutely hilarious that conservatives now say that protesting a policy of the Biden administration means you hate America. I also love the sudden right-wing view that protests must be demure and quiet after the COVID protests in January 6th. See, this takes balls because now you're really hitting them where they have the most in their feelings. Like, this is really hitting them where it hurts. Right. And as someone who defended the January 6th protesters, I thought they were, on a whole, really outrageously overcharged. You do have to admit that was a rowdy protest. Like, I'm not going to say that was not a rowdy protest. Right. And so to go there when so much of your audience is MAGA aligned, that takes some fucking stones right there to go there, and the protest and the COVID protests as well. I find it quite charming, these new etiquette rules from some conservatives about how protests must be demure, unintrusive, and rule-abiding. January 6th aside, I recall during COVID when armed protesters trespassed state capitals to denounce and violate mask and lockdown rules, and he posts a photo of these fine gentlemen here with the wow face. Yeah, imagine they were pro-Palestine protesters. Imagine the reaction to that, right? Yeah. And so good on him for going there, because that's a place that is very risky to go when you have an audience that, even by his own admission, and I don't fault him for this, we had a similar audience dynamic ourselves for a while there, has a lot of MAGA in it. But that's called keeping it real. That's called keeping it real. You can't call these protests outrageous and improper and threatening when you support this. Now, you could support, look, I don't know what the rules are. I don't know state by state what the open carry laws are regarding bringing guns to a courthouse. That seems like a fairly threatening thing to do. I don't know the legality of it depending on the jurisdiction. But what I do know is that if those were pro-Palestine protesters doing that, you would be calling for their arrest and imprisonment and, yes, deportation of anyone.
Absolutely.
And so good on him for keeping it. You just got to keep it real there. You got to keep, because they're such fucking hypocrites. And he's totally right. Totally right. Those COVID protests, if protests of that character were oriented towards Israel-Palestine, outrage from the right. If a January 6th style event happens in the name of the pro-Palestine cause, forget it. Forget it. Forget it to be martial law.
Completely the opposite.
We'd be in lockdown.
These
oddly enough,
need to be locked up and throw away the keys, send them to Guantanamo. Oh my God! If January 6th were a left-oriented protest,
exactly.
Oh my! If that were to keep Biden in office,
exactly. Exactly. So just good on him.
We've seen this hypocrisy, and look, going forward, I've held out hope. I've critiqued. I haven't gone out of my way with people that I've hoped would come around, but I'm very heartened to hear that Taibbi and Kern talked about this. I have felt that Taibbi, who openly said he didn't want to cover this Israel subject, I feel that was a big mistake for him because it touches on so many other subjects. It really limited what he could cover. And it's just glaring when you're a free major voice in exposing censorship, that the biggest censorship story of your time is something you've tied your hands and said you're not going to cover. So what it reflects badly on legitimate stories that you're doing, because, oh, well, you'll cover the countering digital hate, but you won't cover these students getting their heads cracked at Columbia. But I have felt, look, as this administration more and more shows its true colors, I think people are going to have to make a choice. And that's when you're really going to see, man. So like I said, I'm very glad to hear that Taibbi and Curran covered that. Glenn, he was never going to bend that knee. Lee Fong, I always sing his praises. That guy doesn't know the meaning of audience capture. I hope he stays that way. I think he will. But you got a lot of these people, man, who have just who just tweeted. Was it Glenn who just tweeted out that Mehdi Hassan has lost his mind because he was compared. Yeah, he compared Greenwald to Barry Weiss as somebody who bent the knee to powerful interests, meaning he's gone MAGA.
Right.
Well, this stuff. How does that square with this? If anything, Barry Weiss is completely on the opposite side.
Yeah. I saw somebody in the chat post that, maybe Dore opened him up. Yeah, he was on Jimmy. Jimmy pressed him on the Israel issue, and then he talked about
him on that quite a lot.
So that's good because, look, I mean, I've always thought Matt was a great guy, and great at what he does, obviously. But yeah, this especially is unavoidable. Like you have no reputation, like you have no credibility if you don't talk about this.
Right.
This is just an outrageous.
Especially when you specialize in speech and censorship.
The fucking guy is in jail 1,000 miles from home with a pregnant wife who's an American citizen. He did nothing. The man didn't do anything. Like, this gets lost in this because this is how propaganda works. They'll just spin up they will just gin up such a hysteria and such ill will towards people of certain persuasions or certain races or of certain opinions or of certain national backgrounds that you forget to ask yourself, what did this guy do? And what was he accused of doing? Answer, nothing. Right. Nothing. He didn't do anything. There's no evidence of him doing anything. There's no video of him saying anything that constitutes a threat. Nothing. The man did nothing. The man expressed opinions about politics, which not everybody is going to like, but as a legal resident of the United States, he has the absolute right to express whatever political opinion he wants. He did nothing wrong at all. So if you have nothing to say about this, you're dog shit. You're dog shit. Like you can't not say anything about this.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm glad that this administration is so early showing its cards, because that's giving people the opportunity to decide what side you want to be on, man. Look, I understand that honeymoon period. Everybody wants to feel like, God damn it, I wouldn't have thought it, but Trump is going to turn out to be a great president. I get getting caught up in that enthusiasm, especially as you see these organizations that a lot of people on the left have always hated, like NED and USAID and the FBI and the CIA getting their comeuppance. I get it. But it was always pretty clear, I think, what they were doing those things for and in service of and where all this was going. And sometimes even the thing that you hate could be worse. And I think they're showing you what worse looks like very, very quickly, not slowly, quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we're only 6 weeks in. I mean,
we're only 6 weeks in.
It kind of felt like it feels like it's been a year, but it is not. It's been 6 weeks.
You didn't get your Epstein files, but you're getting gross violations of the First Amendment.
Please clap.